You think he's just scared, that he needs more time, that if you're patient, loving, and consistent, he'll eventually see what's right in front of him. But what if I told you his fear of commitment has nothing to do with time and everything to do with how he feels when he's around you? Because men don't avoid commitment for the reasons you've been told. It's not because they're emotionally immature. It's not because they haven't healed, and it's not because they want to keep playing games forever. Sometimes men avoid commitment when they do feel something real, but that feeling threatens a part of them they've spent years hiding from. So today I want to take you into his head, into the quiet fears he won't say out loud, and into the one shift that makes him stop running and start showing up. Let's begin. He says, I'm just not ready. But then a few months later, he's dating someone else. And that hits you like betrayal, because it wasn't about timing, it was about you, right? Not exactly. When a man tells you he's not ready, what he's really saying is, I don't feel emotionally safe enough to lose myself in this yet. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because losing himself in love has never felt like a win for him. It's felt like a trap. For some men, commitment isn't a warm, exciting idea. It's a story filled with loss, pressure, or failure. And when they sense that you want more, their first instinct is not to lean in, it's to protect their autonomy. But here's the twist. It's not that he doesn't want love. It's that he's never seen love that didn't cost someone their peace. You think it's about patience, waiting for the right moment, the right stars to align. But timing isn't always external. It's emotional. Sometimes he's not ready because of his career or circumstances. He's not ready because being loved deeply means being seen. And being seen when he's not proud of who he is. That's the kind of timing no calendar can fix. When he starts something with you, then says he needs time and ends up dating someone else, you take it personally. But it's not about who you are. It's about how he feels in your presence. Sometimes he chooses someone who demands less, not because she's better, but because she's easier to hide from. The right love asks him to grow, and growth requires readiness, not convenience. He's told that men need to be ready before they commit, but readiness isn't always about having a stable job or ticking life goals. It's about emotional regulation. It's about whether he can sit in vulnerability without fleeing. And if he doesn't feel emotionally stable around you, not because of you, but because of what's being stirred up in him, he'll call it bad timing instead of facing his discomfort. It's painful to hear, but some men don't fear love. They fear what love requires of them. They fear being accountable, being known, being expected to show up consistently. So when you offer something safe and real, he might not say no, he just says later, knowing that later lets him avoid the mirror your presence holds up. The hardest truth is this: men can crave connection and still run from it. You can be everything he says he wants and still he won't stay. Why? Because staying means becoming a version of himself he's not familiar with yet. And that unfamiliar self is terrifying. Not because of you, but because of who he's afraid he can't become. There's a reason he lights up when things are light and playful, but shuts down the moment you ask, where is this going? It's not the question, it's the feeling behind it. What he hears isn't just curiosity, he hears demand, obligation, a loss of freedom, because deep down he equates commitment with a power shift. He fears that once he commits, he's no longer leading the connection, he's reacting to it. And most men, they want to feel like they're choosing love, not being pressured into surrendering to it. But here's the truth: he will only stop avoiding commitment when being with you feels like expansion, not containment. When he feels respected, not managed, inspired, not interrogated. When you ask, where is this going, and he withdraws, it's not always the question itself, it's the emotional undertone of pressure he feels behind it. Even if your words are calm, what he hears is, are you ready to be captured? And for many men, love has been framed as a place where they lose power, not a space where they grow. He's not necessarily trying to avoid you, he's trying to avoid the loss of control. In past relationships, or even childhood, he may have learned that love is where men get manipulated, silenced, or expected to perform. So when he senses your emotional depth, he doesn't reject it. He tries to protect himself from being consumed by it. Many men have internalized this belief. Once they commit, they no longer lead, they react, they respond, and that's terrifying for someone who's spent his life believing that masculine energy means independence. Commitment to him starts to feel like submission, but he doesn't realize that true partnership requires shared leadership. If he feels like you want answers more than connection, he'll start testing the dynamic, not because he wants to control you, but because he wants to feel safe within himself. He wants to know that if he says, "I need space," you won't abandon him or guilt him into closeness. When you let him breathe, you're not stepping back, you're letting him step toward you. Love becomes a threat when it's associated with losing freedom. So when a man hesitates to commit, ask yourself, does this feel like an invitation or an interrogation? Because if he feels like you need him to complete you, his instinct will be to retreat. But if he feels like your life is full with or without him, he'll be pulled into your gravity. Sometimes a man avoids commitment, not because of who you are, but because of who he believes he isn't. Men carry shame too. Shame around not being enough, not succeeding fast enough, not knowing how to lead a relationship the right way. And when he meets a high-value woman, one who sees all of him, even the parts he's not proud of, he panics because in her eyes he sees a mirror. A mirror he can't lie to. A mirror that might expose the emotional weight he's buried for years. So he ghosts or retreats into silence or says, "I don't want to ruin what we have by rushing it." But that's not caution. That's fear of not being good enough for the kind of love you're offering. Some men carry wounds that are invisible even to themselves. Shame doesn't always show up in tears, it shows up in avoidance. When he feels not good enough, he doesn't say it, he just ghosts, disappears, changes the subject, not because he doesn't care, but because he doesn't want to be exposed as inadequate. You might be the first woman who truly sees him, not just the confident, funny surface, but the insecure parts underneath. And that kind of seeing is terrifying because when you reflect his worth, he's also forced to face everything he hasn't healed. Everything he's pushed down and labeled not important. You see his potential, he sees his flaws. Commitment means being known. And for a man who's ashamed of who he is, that's a nightmare, because being loved for the version of him he's pretending to be feels safe. But being loved for the version of him he actually is, that feels like standing naked in front of a storm, vulnerable, powerless, exposed. He might not be avoiding you. He might be avoiding the reflection of himself he sees when he's around you, because you awaken something honest, and honest love demands growth. It requires a man to stop numbing and start facing, and if he hasn't done that inner work, the deeper the connection gets, the faster he runs. His shame tells him he's not enough, so when you give love freely, he questions it. Why does she care so much? What does she want from me? He may even sabotage the relationship, not to hurt you, but to confirm what he already believes, that he's unlovable. And unless he confronts that shame, no amount of love can override it. Here's something no one tells you. When a man avoids commitment, he often watches how you respond more than what he feels. He watches whether you chase him when he withdraws, whether you change your standards to keep the peace, whether you try to convince him that you're worth choosing, and with every small compromise, you unknowingly confirm the story he's been telling himself, that love is a place where he'll lose his identity. But when you stand rooted in your self-respect, something shifts. He realizes you're not asking him to become someone he's not. You're simply inviting him to meet someone you already are. And that invitation, without pressure, without begging, is what changes everything, because now he's not committing out of guilt. He's rising into it by choice. Most women don't realize this. A man who avoids commitment is watching you more than you think. He notices how quickly you text back, how often you bring up the relationship, whether you're willing to compromise your needs to keep him close. And if you give too much, he doesn't feel grateful, he feels burdened. When he pulls away and you chase, he learns that you're more invested than he is, that you're willing to do the emotional heavy lifting. And ironically, that lowers his desire to commit, because now the dynamic feels uneven. And men don't stay where they feel constantly pursued, They stay where they feel inspired to pursue. If every time he withdraws, you respond with anxiety instead of calm clarity, he interprets that as pressure. Even if your intentions are loving, your reactions teach him how far he can push and how much ground he can lose without consequence. And once he knows you'll always reach out first, the balance shifts. True feminine power isn't about convincing, it's about standing still and letting him meet you there. When he realizes you won't abandon yourself to keep him comfortable, he starts to respect your energy. And that respect, that's the first step toward real emotional commitment. You're not there to pass a man's emotional tests. You're there to honor your own standards. But when you respond to his inconsistency with self-trust instead of fear, something radical happens. He starts to realize he's the one being tested. And that's when a man either rises or removes himself. You can't force a man to be ready, but you can show him that being seen by you doesn't mean being controlled. That commitment doesn't mean losing his freedom. It means finding a deeper version of it with you by his side. And that starts the moment you stop trying to prove your worth and start living like it's already recognized. Because the truth is, the women men commit to aren't always the ones who gave the most, waited the longest, or held on the tightest. They're the women who knew that love can't be built by convincing. It's built by inspiring safety, respect, and trust. And that's the part you do have control over. So the next time he avoids commitment, don't ask what's wrong with me. Ask instead, is this the love I want to keep choosing, even when it's not choosing me back? Because sometimes the boldest way to earn a man's heart is by having the courage to walk away until he's ready to bring it fully. You can't make him be ready. You can't love him into healing, but you can create a space where love feels safe, not smothering. A place where your peace leads the way, where your boundaries are quiet but firm. That's what magnetizes the right man, not your effort, but your energy. When you stop trying to prove your worth, you remind him that you already know it. That's the kind of woman a man doesn't forget. Because she doesn't beg, chase, or convince. She inspires. And the moment you shift from proving to embodying is the moment he realizes what he's at risk of losing. Most men don't fall for the woman who gives the most. They fall for the woman who gives from a place of wholeness, not fear. And when you know that your love is a gift, not a transaction, you stop tolerating confusion. Because real love doesn't come with mixed signals, it comes with clarity. The man who's meant for you won't be confused. He won't have to be chased. He'll recognize your peace as something rare. He'll feel safer in your presence than in his patterns. And that's when commitment becomes effortless, not forced. The deepest form of attraction isn't about looks or chemistry. It's about emotional resonance. When a man feels seen without being controlled, admired without being idolized, and respected without pressure, that's when he begins to commit. Not out of fear, not out of guilt, but because he finally feels free. You weren't made to chase, you were made to invite, to magnetize, and the man who's meant to build a life with you won't need to be convinced to stay. He'll recognize your peace and realize it's the safest place he's ever known. Until then, don't lower your standards to keep someone interested. Raise your energy until the wrong ones lose access, because the man who's ready won't run from the love you offer. He'll rise to meet it. If this spoke to something inside you, if you've ever felt like you were too much for someone who simply wasn't ready, I want you to remember this. Your depth is not a flaw. Your clarity is not pressure. And your standards, they are not negotiable just because someone else feels uncertain. You are not here to shrink yourself to fit into someone's fear. You are here to be seen, chosen, and met fully. And if a man isn't ready to rise to that, it doesn't mean you need to lower what you offer. It means he's not the one. So if this message whispered to a part of you that's been questioning your worth, do me a favor. Leave a comment below and let me know, have you ever had a man pull away right when things got real? What did you learn about yourself in that moment? Pandnai, your story might be exactly what another woman needs to hear today. And if you found clarity in this video, don't keep it to yourself. Share this with a friend who's been giving too much to someone who can't give back. Tap that like button if you're done waiting for someone else to validate your worth. Hit subscribe and turn on the bell if you're ready for more high-value insight every week. Because the truth is, this journey is easier when you don't walk it alone. And if no one's told you this today, you are allowed to take up space to want more, to stop settling for almost. The right man won't ask you to be less. He'll recognize everything you are and realize it's everything he's been looking for. I'll see you in the next one. And until then, stay soft, stay strong, and never apologize for wanting something real.